The clouds parted over the Isles of Boreas. It was time to choose. The rebellion was in trouble. Ravens were scouting for the secret rebel base. They needed a game changer. Pieces of the Sky Ripper had surfaced. Or so a scholar in the mountains had told him. Surely the weapon that banished the lost gods could defeat the Emperor. Also, a temple had risen out of empty desert. The Iblis stone was hidden there. It was a dangerous artifact. It could corrupt its user into a bloodthirsty monster. Maybe he could find a way to use it. To take its power without surrendering to its wickedness. And also, his old friend Lupino needed rescuing. Of course, Renato had a pretty strong suspicion that Lupino had betrayed the rebellion. But could Renato really leave an old friend to the Ravens? Every child knew about the Sky Ripper. The Transcendent Emperor had buried its pieces. What could have brought them to light? This Emperor, Isengrim III, had once been kind, but he'd gone mad. And now he was conducting secret, obscene rituals to bring back the lost gods. Had he, somehow, summoned the long-lost components of the legendary weapon out of the deep places of the earth? It was more than Renato could fathom. But if he could find a legendary weapon, he would use it. As he set foot on the island, Renato couldn't help feeling a bit curious. Was Lupino still waiting to be rescued? No. He was probably drinking champagne with the ravens. Did ravens drink champagne? Did rabbits? Renato felt oddly thirsty, come to think of it. Why had he chosen the Sky Ripper? Renato never made plans that required constant vigilance. He was a hero. He didn't think too much. He just went with his gut and hoped it all worked out. The Sky Ripper was a long shot. He'd have to devote himself to it. No side journeys, no rescuing old friends. That was against his nature. Could he stick with it? Not quite enough, thought Renato. Two eyes good. One eye dead. The people who had built this castle, did they even know what monstrous weapon lay hidden within their walls? The Sky Ripper could destroy anything it touched, or so the legend said. As the Transcendent Emperor had fought the lost gods, thousands of thousands had died. But Renato had been through wars. The only merciful war was a short one. Nice. That could be useful. blinked.
Puzzle. Renato loved puzzles, except when he couldn't figure them out. On the other hand, if there was a puzzle, it was probably meant to keep people away from something good. What was the point of this gate? Did they think no one would notice the lever? Had once invested in a jewel store, but had lost money because someone kept robbing it. That had been his mistake before, thinking he could win a battle of wills with an ancient evil all by himself. He had to be cleverer than that, or braver, or something. There it was, Sky Ripper's armature. The stuff that dreams are made of. Engineers' dreams, anyway. The device was intricate. No one alive had the skill to make a thing like it. How was it part of a weapon at all? He'd have to ask a scientist. But first, he'd get the second piece. Sky Ripper had a heart. A core that had come to rest on the next island. Well, there was another island he could reach. Zenobia had just invaded it with her father's Raven battalions. She must be encamped there still. But fighting Zenobia now, that made no sense at all. He'd already sacrificed one friend to get this armature, was it? He didn't need to hurry to face her. She would find him. It was a no-brainer. He'd sacrificed his old friend Lapino to get the armature. And the armature was useless by itself, only a series of coils and wheels. War demanded sacrifices, and he would make more before the end.
He would have to choose the greatest good no matter how much it cost him. Zenobia. Well, he would see her sooner or later, across a battlefield or a sword's point before all this was over. He was sure of that. The power was in the core. Obviously, he had to get the core.
Doubt sunk in before he was even out of sight of the Farfarer. Why had he chosen the Sky Ripper? It was the sort of path he'd always avoided. The path of responsibility, of seriousness. Had he? Doubt sunk in before he was even out of sight of the Farfarer. Why had he chosen the Sky Ripper? It was the sort of path he'd always avoided. The path of responsibility, of seriousness. Had he grown up? He didn't feel grown up. He'd made this decision from his gut, like he always did. Somehow, he'd impulsively decided to stop being impulsive. Did that make any sense?
Look, it's not personal, but you all smell terrible.
Of power. Ooh, you didn't find those every day. Renata knew more than he ever had. But about what? There was something sour in the air. Like the earth had ruptured over something that had been fermenting for a very long time. Once you try it, you're hooked. There were fewer and fewer trees. There were only these huge crystalline growths. Had those been here before? He no longer heard birds except for the feverish cawing of the ravens when they attacked. He couldn't smell the small animals of the forest, the mice and rabbits. Where had they gone? And he was getting hungry too. This was an unhealthy place to be.
Someone needs a bath. Of course there was a puzzle. You couldn't expect the Transcendent Emperor to bury a god's eye in a leather sack where anyone could pick it up. Cool. Wish I could do that. Silent type.
The 20-sided core made him feel physically sick. Once he had sneaked into a temple of the dark art, and he hadn't liked what he smelt and saw there. This felt like that. As quick as he could, he wrangled the icosahedron into the armature. The wheels began to spin, then glow. The sick feeling quickly spun away. Now he only felt sad. He had lost good friends for this war apparatus. Maybe Lapino wasn't such a good friend. Yeah, that made him feel better. He carried his prize back to the Farfarer. Now, he had to make his next move. There was a key Imperial outpost on the Nexus. If this really was some sort of super weapon, he could use it to wreak havoc on the enemy. And if it wasn't, well, better to know that before the final battle. But maybe he should show it to some scientists first. There was an observatory on the Nexus. Maybe he should go there before he fired it. Well, of course. If you've just assembled a weapon out of legend that can exile gods from the world, you'd want to have a scientist or two look at it. And even if they disagreed and he had time, he could ask Calaveras himself. Yes, the observatory would be his objective. Why had the parts of the Sky Ripper only surfaced now, thousands of years after the Transcendent Emperor had dismantled it? The mad Emperor Isengrim had performed terrible, bloodthirsty rituals to invoke the lost gods. Was that why these ancient artifacts were rising out of the ground? How perfect, then, that the Sky Ripper would reappear to be his destruction. Once, he found a Superman issue #1 in mint condition in a jar he'd broken.
He planned to keep breaking things until he had the whole series. What were these poles, exactly? Parking meters from the time of the lost gods? A legendary weapon was exactly what the rebellion needed. They were outnumbered. The once kind emperor had become a tyrant. But his ravens stayed loyal, for he fed them his victims, and the other animals were too frightened to rebel. Renato shuddered at what the emperor was trying to do. To bring back the lost gods, the Black Harvest, the Black Sun? No. He would stop that toad, no matter what the risk. Hey, a workbench! He could try out his new bling. Take a leap of faith, said the inscription.
Go. The live ones, I mean.
Renato was thrilled. The scientists seemed to think he'd put the Sky Ripper together right. But one toad was worried.
Yeah, the Sky Ripper could carve a hole in existence itself. There are invisible strings that tie the universe together. If the Sky Ripper cut one, the hole would widen and widen until our whole existence fell into it.
Another toad sighed.
Irving still believes in string theory.
At least go see Calaveras.
Yeah, said the worried toad.
He knows more than anyone else has forgotten about the Transcendent Emperor.
If anyone could tell him how to use this weapon safely, it would be Calaveras. It was he who had told Renato how to find it in the first place. But maybe he had to give up on using it as a weapon. Maybe he had to go to the secret rebel base and ask the generals there what he could do with a weapon that he dared not use. Well, he should have known he'd have to consult Calaveras again. The scientists at the observatory were smart enough. But what did they know of the Transcendent Emperor? He hoped it wouldn't delay him too long. The rebels had scheduled the final battle soon. Every day they delayed risked the exposure of the secret base. And some soldiers were already drifting back to their homes and families. Calaveras would fix the Sky Ripper for him. And then he would win the final battle. Maybe it was the cold. But after a few steps, Renato's optimism started to slump. What if Calaveras couldn't help? Did Renato dare use the Sky Ripper? Oh, he hated that he had chosen this path. It was so much simpler to rescue friends and attack enemies, even if some of those friends were more trouble than his enemies. Some of those enemies had been friends before and might be lovers after. No, okay, it wasn't all that much simpler, no. Physics made his brain hurt. That, at least, he was sure of. They barely landed a claw on him. Thought, Renato? Hero wall, hero sword, ice wall, ice cube. This is quite the view, he thought. He tried to focus on the now. The ravens who seemed everywhere all the time. Where did they hatch from? Were there giant raven hatcheries somewhere, or did they have families? Ooh, he didn't want to think about raven mummies raising their darling raven chicks. Yeah, Calaveras would help. He would make Renato feel better about using the Sky Ripper, and then Renato wouldn't have to worry about ravens ever again. Sometimes, Renato really hated inanimate objects.
Give me a lever, said Archimedes, and I shall open a gate. Renato had sacrificed a friend for the Sky Ripper. It would be worth it if he could bring a super weapon to the rebellion, but the scientists had ruined everything. He felt like Tarzan. Calaveras had never let him down.
Yeah, of course I can make it work better.
But when Renato explained about the strings, Calaveras grew thoughtful.
Oh, strings, you say? Well, the Arcana do speak of the ties that bind the world.
He drew many intricate symbols in the dirt.
Yeah, so, according to my calculations, each time you fire, I'm afraid there's a 1 in 128 chance you'll destroy the universe.
That's pretty good odds. That's like rolling, 21 dice and they all come up 6. What are the odds of that?
What? No! It's more like 2.716s in a row.
Anyway, with those odds, it won't happen if I use it just once.
What? No. That's so not right. Each time you use it... Okay, look. Just don't use it ever. At all, okay?
All right, I guess.
As he sailed away from the mountains, Renato could see clouds darkening. Rain? No. Ships. Imperial ships, swarming thick as bees.
This was it. The big battle. They could not afford to lose this one. What if it did not go well? What if he had to use the Sky Ripper? Could he gamble the universe? On the other hand, what were the odds of rolling 21 6s in a row? The battle was not going spectacularly well. What had the rebels been thinking? They'd been thinking he would bring the Sky Ripper, or the Iblis Stone, or that he'd sideline Zenobia somehow, or turn her. Couldn't he use the Sky Ripper just once? After all, if chances were 1 in 128, that meant he'd for sure be okay the first time. They'd get worse each time he used it, but the first time would be okay, right? He wasn't sure that it was right. So he didn't fire the Sky Ripper. He just brought it along, in case. Ooh, what's there? Someone had told him the odds didn't change just because you'd had a streak of good luck. His gut told him that was wrong, though. And he always listened to his gut. On the other hand, 128 chances to win. But one of them, he'd destroy the universe. Ooh, that seemed a bit serious. Maybe he could defeat the Emperor without firing the Sky Ripper. Maybe he could bluff, but with a real weapon. Like in cards, when you had 3 names, but you pretended you had a fizz-bin. That could work.
This was definitely better than pulling yourself up in a bucket.
Idly, if people who had built these poles had really, really long tentacles. He set up the Sky Ripper and let it warm up. He would bluff if he had to. Zenobia came out, flanked by a very daunting platoon of ravens. "You won't actually use that," she said in that annoying, "I know everything because I'm a cat and you know nothing because you're just a fox" voice she had. "Or I know the odds." Good, because there's a real chance you could destroy the universe. No, not the first time I use it. The odds are too low. What? No? Yeah, sure. The first time, the odds are practically nothing. They only go up if I use it a bunch more times. No, but that's not how odds work. Didn't you pay attention in class? Now surrender, or I'll use it. Just once, he said. Don't.
He felt sure the odds were with him. He had to go with his gut. That's what heroes do. "Fire," he said. "Please?" The Sky Ripper fired. With a tremendous whoosh, the Emperor's flagship went up in flames. It was awesome. And then he noticed
there was a hole in the air. A blackness, like a tear in a parchment. Wind was blowing into it, widening it. It grew larger, and even larger. Crates fell upwards into it, and the world itself seemed bent, like the reflection on a curved mirror, as it poured into the ravenous hole. 1 in 128. What are the odds? Thought Fernando, and then everything fell into the hole and was gone. And just like that, he was alive again, and back on the Farfarer, still fleeing burning Ubar. The book was still open before him. So, the book was a portal. It took you to the future, when your destinies would branch. He had failed and died 3 times, but he'd learned another true thing. The core was powerful, but dangerous if used improperly. But he was starting to feel like he was getting the hang of this. There was a way through to victory. He could feel it. He just had to keep running the path of destinies. With that, the book fluttered back to the beginning, and he fell into it. The clouds parted over the Isles of Boreas. It was time to choose. The rebellion was in trouble. Ravens were scouting for the secret rebel base. They needed a game-changer. Pieces of the Sky Ripper had surfaced. Renato knew that using it could go catastrophically wrong, but he was sure he could figure out how to use it safely. Also, a temple had risen out of empty desert. The Iblis stone was hidden there.
It was a dangerous artifact. It could corrupt its user into a bloodthirsty monster. Maybe he could find a way to use it, to take its power without surrendering to its wickedness. And also, his old friend Lapino needed rescuing. Of course, Renato had a pretty strong suspicion that Lapino had betrayed the rebellion. But could Renato really leave an old friend to the Ravens?
Ah, Lapino. Apparently, the Mad Rabbit had sold a Pegasus that he did not exactly own. Lapino always wiggled out of trouble, given time. But he was out of time.
Lapino's frantic message said that the Ravens were going to kill him for being a rebel spy. And that he had a clever plan.
If the fleet reached him first, they'd string him up for that. Never mind the winged horse.
Or so Lapino had told him over the far speaker anyway.
Lapino had apparently managed to confuse the judge by arguing that he hadn't actually stolen the winged horse. He'd only sold it. But wait, where was the prison? The village was empty. Had everybody fled the Ravens?
That was odd. Renato had been here, at this exact place, at this exact time. But this time, there were so many more Ravens. Renato looked around the empty village and reflected. The Sky Ripper had turned out to be far too dangerous to be used. Time to turn to what he knew best.
Oh, good! I need a new rug for the nest, said the lead raven.
Ooh, sparkly, thought Renato. It would be fun to try out that one. And here was a handy workbench.
Renato, smash!
This jewel was more than sparkly. It had arcane power and an engraving. To Cindy.
Ravens were landing everywhere. The advance guard. He'd better get moving. If they got to Lupino first, they'd eat him for breakfast. Or a snack. Ravens weren't picky. If they got hungry, they sometimes forgot to interrogate their prisoners. Even top spies like Lupino.
Well, unless he really was a traitor, obviously. Then they'd probably pin a medal on his chest.
Dirty and bloody, Renato finally reached Lupino. The rabbit was practicing his shuffle. Renato recognized the cards. It was Lupino's favorite deck. Oh, I thought you were in danger. I am. The Ravens are coming. Oh, the prison thing. Right, yeah, we see this guard owed me 53 ducats, so we made a deal. They're very reasonable people, actually, for weasels. Now, I got a brilliant plan to kidnap Zenobia. We capture Zenobia, we find out what she knows, and that's the whole war right there. Easy peasy, lemon squeezy. Capture the Emperor's greatest general, who also happened to be a deadly sorcerer and, oh, his only daughter? That would be worth it. On the other hand, he could still get to the core of the Sky Ripper, even if he couldn't get the whole thing. It must have great power. Zenobia wasn't just the Emperor's daughter, of course. She'd been Renato's best friend in Sword Fu school. And you're still mad for her, the rabbit reminded him. They'd been close. She'd told him things no one else knew. But she'd never told him who she really was.
She knows all the Emperor's plans, chuckled the master spy.
She won't give them up easily.
She'll tell the interrogators, all right, said Lupino.
Taking her would change the game, all right.
The city was already under Zenobia's control. I had to admire her efficiency. Renato shivered at the thought of Zenobia at the mercy of the interrogators. Would he really turn her over to them? But this was war. It wasn't meant to be pretty. Ooh, sparkly, thought Renato.
Get all the ingredients for a pretty nifty sword.
Raven can't fly, thought Renato. Firewalls only let you through if they think you're hot enough. Why was Lupino urging him to capture Zenobia? Obviously it was a trap. But you never knew how Lupino thought. Sometimes his plans were so convoluted they did the exact opposite to what Lupino wanted. There must be some way to play on that, Renato thought.
Didn't your mother tell you it's rude to stare? Snapped Renato, a little smug. So, what's this plan of yours? Use me as bait, said Lupino. And he outlined a slightly complicated plan that involved geese, a net, setting the Farfarer a little bit on fire, Lupino dressing as an old blind toad, and Renato hiding inside a monstrous watermelon. What could possibly go wrong? Thought Renato.
"Oh, this is gonna be fun," said Lapino, as he ran to go set up his marvelous plan. People had laughed at the government workbench placement program, but you could see the benefits everywhere.
Really bring out your eyes.
Shouldn't get impatient. He needed to take the time to figure out what all his experience had brought him. Renato felt dubious about the whole plan. With every step, he was waiting for it all to go horribly wrong. But against all odds, Pino's idiotic plan worked. Zenobia's ravens ran off after the geese, the net dropped, and Renato jumped out of the watermelon and put his sword to Zenobia's throat.
Renato, she said. Are those new scars? They look good on you. You never return my velvet jacket. It was my favorite. You look stupid in velvet. Oh, what does an imperial princess know about style? Oh, get a room, you two, said Lapino.
But the fleet was coming on fast, so they put Zenobia on the Farfarer and took her east over the Nexus.
She'd vanished from Swordfu School, from his life, without even saying goodbye, without ever telling him she was the Emperor's adopted daughter. Ah, Lapino was right, Renato thought reluctantly. She knows things. She recognized his look. You're taking me to the interrogators, aren't you? She said, wide-eyed. And then she jumped, with horror. Renato saw Zenobia plummeting. Then he saw the Nexus below them. Cats always land on their feet. Ah, she'll head for the Imperial outpost, yelled Lapino. You have to catch her. Cats can run faster, but foxes can run longer. If he ran, he could head her off before she reached her minions at the outpost. Well, he did love a good chase.
Renato went to the china shop. For some reason, the owner was always nervous. He wished there were more pylons he could use the hook on. They really needed to construct additional pylons. Why would anyone put his slinky collection in a strongbox, thought Renato. The magic slinkies? Oh, and there was something else.
He was closing on her. He could smell her fear. He tried not to think about the interrogators at the secret base. What did they do to her? Maybe it didn't have to end that way. Maybe he could talk to her. But, after all, there were worse things the Imperials had done to friends of his.
Ooh, a workbench. Did he have any jewels he hadn't tried out?
He had. Renato reached the outpost. The Imperials there were no match for him. Soon after, Zenobia limped up the path. When she realized he was already in front of her, she didn't even try to run. "Oh, you left without saying goodbye." Again, he said, "Please, I'm enjoying this a little too much." She said, shaken. "Oh, spare us the chit-chat, would you?" said Lapino as he shackled her hands so she couldn't throw spells. She knows all his plans. All the way back to the Farfarer, Lapino nagged Renato about how the interrogators would pry all the intel out of Zenobia. How that would turn the tides in the imminent battle. All they had to do was take her to the rebel secret base. Renato didn't like to think about what the interrogators would do to her. Couldn't he just talk to her? As they reached the ruins, Renato could see ravens everywhere, searching for the rebel base. They'd have to hide the Farfarer or go on foot. What if we get separated? Asked Lupino, for once thinking ahead. I'll show you a map to the base. Renato told Lupino.
Renato, don't do this, said Zenobia. We were friends once. We...
Shut it, witch, or I'll shackle your mouth too, said Lupino.
See? Renato thought. There was no way Lupino was working for the Empire. He really hated Zenobia. And then, a few moments later, they touched down. As Lupino pulled Zenobia off the Farfarer, Renato readied himself for the battle ahead.
I'm sorry I nicked your jacket, she said. It's just... Oh God. It's stupid, but... It smelled like you. What? He said, confused. Then... Why didn't you write? Why didn't you far speak? Oh, save the romantic nostalgia. Let's go! Shrieked Lupino.
So Renato launched himself down the path to the secret base. If they didn't want their things broken, they really ought to make them stronger. The platform used a hybrid propulsion system fueled by anti-gravity and wishful thinking. Renato was walking Zenobia to the rebel secret base, where she would be interrogated. So, why was he feeling so scared?
Is that a word for a lot of ravens? Like a doofus of ravens?
You never knew where the road would take you, thought Renato.
What else could you hook? Boy, someone had spent a lot of money for a graduation present.
They caught their breath. It's beautiful, she said, looking at the ruins. This used to be the library of Ubar, he said. Before your father's ravens smashed it. Do we have to talk politics? She asked. That's not how I want to remember you, she said with an odd, wistful look at her face. She was as beautiful as she'd ever been, and as brave. Peppino huffed. They got back on the trail.
That had gone rather well, actually.
Bernardo hot potato.
Ha! Bet you never saw that coming. The long stairs. So he was close to the rebel base. Nothing was on fire. So far, so good. We needed some way to break the ice with this wall, so to speak. It was time for a little exploration. they made their way to the secret rebel base, Renato felt strange. Zenobia was his prisoner, yet somehow she felt more like an old friend. He wanted to tell her all his secrets, and suddenly the ruins lit up with thousands of fireworks. There was a thunderous roar and dust rose. The caves were collapsing.
The caves!
"You've been playing me?" Renato said, and he stared at Zenobia.
I'm sorry, she said, and she seemed almost embarrassed. Then everything went dark.
When Renato came to, he had a terrible headache. Also, Zenobia's sword was at his throat. And her shackles were gone. So was Lupino. "The terrible thing is," he said, "I really have missed you. Now that we've destroyed the rebellion, would you consider becoming an advisor to the Emperor's daughter?"
I'm no one's servant. Everybody serves. Even if it's only destiny. I like to choose my own destinies, he said.
The whole point of a destiny is you can't choose. "Oh, never mind," she said. "Look, if I see you again, I'll have to kill you."
He watched her ship soar away. He would see her again, he decided, even if he had to fight his way across the entire fleet.
The Imperial fleet was cleaning up the few rebel remnants. For only a moment, he thought about running.
But heroes don't run, even when the world is against them. Even when their cause is hopeless, and their efforts futile, and pointless, and useless, and death painful and guaranteed. He's decided to stop thinking for a while.
The mysterious sword from the east made you so fast you could catch a fly with your chopsticks. If that's what you really wanted. Always a rush.
Renato's arm was sore, his armor wet with raven blood. He was tired of death. But death was not yet tired of him. The rebels were losing. Badly. In some other universe, Renato thought, he and Zenobia had left sword crew school together, taken out their names and sailed off into the mists. Not this Zenobia, and not him. For him, there was nothing to do but forge ahead. Kill the Emperor and end this.
It was all coming back to him. He wondered what he'd remember next. Oh, this really didn't have much in the way of safety features, did it?
He reached the Emperor's ship. Zenobia was there. "Why'd you have to come back?" she said. "Guess I'm just serving my destiny." He shrugged. "You don't even know what that word means," she said. "Do you ever wonder if things have been different all the time?" she said, and drew her sword. In the end, Renato lay bleeding out on the deck. Zenobia sat by his side, upset. "What are you so upset about?" he asked. "You wouldn't understand. Why didn't you tell me you were going to leave school? I was afraid you'd convince me not to." "I guess I'll have to buy you a drink in the halls of the Valiant then," he told her, and then he was gone. Oh, damn it. He'd lost again, and died. But there was burning Ubar behind him. He still had all his destinies ahead of him. But he'd learned another true thing. Zenobia still had feelings for him. He knew enough now, he thought. All these truths tumbling around each other in his head. There must be a way to puzzle the pieces together. If he used everything he knew, he could discover a new path to destiny. The book's pages fluttered to the beginning once again, faster than before, and he fell.
The clouds parted over the Isles of Boreas. It was time to choose. The rebellion was in trouble. Ravens were scouting for the secret rebel base. They needed a game changer.
Pieces of the Sky Ripper had surfaced. Renato knew that using it could go catastrophically wrong. But he was sure he could figure out how to use it safely. Also, a temple had risen out of empty desert. The Iblis stone was hidden there. It was a dangerous artifact. It could corrupt its user into a bloodthirsty monster. Maybe he could find a way to use it, to take its power without surrendering to its wickedness. And also, his old friend Lapino needed rescuing. Of course, Renato had a pretty strong suspicion that Lapino had betrayed the rebellion, and he had a gut feeling that he needed to use that to his advantage.
Renato finally realized that Lapino was a traitor to the cause, and maybe Renato could use that somehow. Renato couldn't quite put his paw on when he'd realized Lapino was working for the Empire. He'd never exactly seen Lapino sending coded messages to the palace, but he was sure. The rabbit had been on too many disastrous missions where he was the only survivor, or where he accidentally missed getting on the boat that went down to the abyss in flames. If Renato could prevent Lapino from getting back to the fleet with all the intelligence he'd probably gathered, it might be worth the trip. How had they come to this? They'd been on so many adventures together. Lapino had talked Renato out of prison at least 4 times, and Renato had rescued Lapino from at least 2 lynch mobs.
You couldn't go sticking jewels in your gauntlet just anywhere. What if you dropped one and broke it? Luckily, there was a bench right here.
he'd always felt that the rabbit resented him. Lupino was hilarious because he was so down on himself and everyone else. But behind the laughs, he wasn't a happy camper. Ooh, was this payback? Or did the Empire have his little white tail in a vice? Smashing things was fun. Hero wall, hero sword, firewall, fire extinguisher. Renato knew the raw power he had gained could be molded into greatness. He was more and more extraordinary. Ravens were landing everywhere from dropships. He'd better get moving. If they got to Lupino first, the rabbit would give the Empire all the intelligence he'd been stealing from the rebellion, and they'd probably give him a medal. He'd have to be very careful about how he played Lupino. At the slightest hint of danger, the mad rabbit would take off like a rabbit.
Very cool sword, thought Larry. But seriously, he couldn't feel his paw anymore.
Lupino would betray him. The core was dangerous. Now, Renato had a fleeting idea that the two ideas went together somehow. And then it was gone again. Ah, damn ideas. They never stuck around when you needed them. He hadn't noticed that path before.
Bloody and exhausted, Renato finally reached Lapino. The rabbit was practicing shuffling his favorite deck. Now that he knew what the rabbit was, there were a few things about him that Renato didn't find so amusing anymore. You sent me an urgent message saying that you're in danger. Oh, I am. The ravens are coming. Now, I got a clever plan to kidnap Zenobia. Renato wanted to clap shackles on the rabbit and shout, "You're a traitor, and I'm not falling for it." But if there was one thing Renato was sure of, it was that the core of the Sky Ripper was dangerous mostly to its user. If he could put it in the Emperor's hands, old Isengrim III might blow himself and his fleet up with it. Yes, that was it. Me? A traitor? I'm hurt, said Lapino. Why ever would you say that? We found your code book, said Renato. They hadn't, but he hoped Lapino would blow his cover. You got me, said Lapino. And you know what? I don't regret a thing. It's always about you, isn't it? You're the pretty hero. You get the girl, you get the medal, and what do I get? Rabbit food. I thought you liked rabbit food. Go to hell, said Lapino, and he made a gesture, and 20 ravens came out of nowhere and stabbed Renato to death. He had tried something bold and paid the price for it. How had they come to this? They'd been on so many adventures together. Lapino had talked Renato out of prison at least 4 times, and Renato had rescued Lapino from at least 2 lynch mobs. Get the marshmallows. But he'd always felt that the rabbit resented him. Lapino was hilarious because he was so down on himself and everyone else. Behind the laughs, he wasn't a happy camper. Ooh, was this payback? Or did the Empire have his little white tail in a vice?
Where was a workbench when you needed one? Oh, never mind.
Ravens were landing everywhere from dropships. He'd better get moving. If they got to Lapino first, the rabbit would give the Empire all the intelligence he'd been stealing from the rebellion, and they'd probably give him a medal. He'd have to be very careful about how he played Lapino. At the slightest hint of danger, the mad rabbit would take off like a rabbit. The new pathway made Renato curious. Bloody and exhausted, Renato finally reached Lapino. The rabbit was practicing shuffling his favorite deck. Oh, I am. The ravens are coming. Now, I got a clever plan to kidnap Zenobia. Renato wanted to clap shackles on the rabbit and shout, "You're a traitor, and I'm not falling for it." But if there was one thing Renato was sure of, it was that the core of the Sky Ripper was dangerous mostly to its user. If he could put it in the Emperor's hands, old Isengrim III might blow himself and his fleet up with it. Yes, that was it. Renato felt like a real hero, brave and smart. He told the rabbit all about the Sky Ripper's God's Eye core.
I'll go get the core while you attack Zenobia.
He told the rabbit.
But wait, I've an even better idea. I'll get the core and you attack Zenobia,
said the rabbit.
Right, yeah, that is better,
agreed Renato. Perfect. The traitor would make sure the Emperor got the core. Now Renato just needed the Emperor to use the core. If he could only get something that the Emperor wanted very badly. Zenobia. He could save her and bait the Emperor at the same time. Right. Now, all Renato had to do was fight his way through Zenobia's invading troops, sneak onto her ship and into her bedroom, and kidnap her without any of her dozens of guards alerting her. Then, he would rely on her love for him to convince her how evil her father was, so she'd run away with him instead of going back to her father, who was going to blow himself up. It did sound a little risky. But Renato had a feeling it would work out somehow. It always did.
Say, how are you guys fixed for life insurance? What was really fun was hooking yourself onto a moving ship. Had that door been opened before? This one contained nothing but unmatched gloves. And something more useful. Renato hated gogglers, and it freaked him out to cut them.
Renato was halfway to Zenobia's encampment when Lupino showed up. He was disheveled and distraught.
They jumped us. I barely got away.
Oh, they got the core. Oh, it was all going according to plan, thought Renato. Now he just needed Zenobia on his side. Yes, that was even better. The Iblis Stone. Zenobia could get it. And then the Emperor would have to pursue them. Wait. No. The gem would corrupt anyone. Even her. That's it, he thought. Even Lupino. Even though Lupino was already a traitor. It would turn him against his secret master, the Emperor. He would try to make himself Emperor. And the Emperor would have to defend himself with the core. Boom. He was a super genius. This is terrible, Renato told the rabbit. If only I had gone for the Iblis Stone. But now it's lost in enemy territory. He handed Lupino a map. It gives the bearer so much power. We can only hope the Emperor never finds it. What was that? Said Lupino. I think someone's following us. I didn't hear anything. Rabbit ears. You go on ahead. I'll check it out. And with that, Lupino hopped off with the map.
Ooh, wouldn't his gauntlet look swell with that jewel in it?
Renato slinked through Zenobia's ship, making no sound at all. She was curled up on her bed. He'd forgotten how beautiful she was, how sleek, how soft. He tapped her on the shoulder with his sword. She was made of smoke, and he noticed he had a very solid blade to his throat. "Did you really think you could capture me?" purred a familiar voice. "I just wanted to chat," said Renato. "Did you ever wonder why the Emperor adopted you? He needs a sacrifice, someone who truly loves him, to make a bargain with the lost gods." "That's a vicious lie. He wants to bring them back." That's crazy. Why would anyone... They could make him immortal. An eater of souls. And with that, her eyes widened. She understood. Renato told her how he had rescued a priest whose order had been massacred. How he had slept in a burnt village. At midnight, the Emperor's victims had come to him in his dreams to tell him of the hideous eldritch rituals they'd been sacrificed in. He could still see those kittens and puppies. Their wide, sad eyes, their moist noses. "You can't prove that." "I've got a witness at the observatory." He couldn't tell her, not yet, why he was really here. He didn't want her to be anywhere near the fleet when her father blew himself and Lupino up. So he told her about how the Emperor's obscene rituals had raised ancient artifacts out of the land. How he'd followed the appalling trail of the hideous horrors His Majesty had perpetrated for the sake of his own immortality. "Any of this ring a bell?" he said. "He told me it was all lies." "You've always known when I was lying. I always hated that about you," said Renato. The rebellion had started after atrocities that the Empire hushed up. Renato had rescued a priest whose order had been massacred for one book. He had slept in a burnt village. Dead kittens and puppies had come to tell him what the Emperor had done to them. He was sort of yanking his own chain, wasn't he? Don't you think I'd know if my father started practicing black magic? Why? Would you join in? No. I'd destroy his books and I'd... Okay, you're not completely wrong. They've resurrected one of his victims. Well, look, I mean, look, it's not exactly alive, but it can talk. A true witness, she said. There was an inscription. Praise the sun.
Energy spheres. Easy to dodge, but boy do they sting if you didn't pay attention. Once, Bernardo had opened a chest, and a Jack-in-the-Box jumped out. Jack-in-the-Boxes, they gave him the Wiggins. The observatory was a burning hulk. Dead scientists and black feathers everywhere. The Ravens had taken special care to burn the reanimated witness to cinders. Zenobia stared at the carnage. He didn't want me to hear the witness, did he? I guess not. What's your plan? She asked. So, Bernardo explained his brilliant gambit. Sending Lapino to get the Iblastone, become super powerful and corrupted, provoke the Emperor into using the core against him, thus blowing up both of them, and hopefully the fleet too. Let me visit your council, she said, shaken. I want to help. Could he really trust her? Done it. He'd made Zenobia see how evil her father really was. He wished she didn't feel this urge to join in the rebellion. After all, he'd taken care of the Emperor, right? Yeah, but she'd always been conscientious like that. She told him she had to go somewhere first. So Renato gave her the location of the secret base, and they agreed to meet in the ruins. He had a very good feeling about this. What had Zenobia gone off to do? What was more important than meeting the rebel council? Had he made a mistake, sending her to the ruins? No. He knew they could trust each other. He could trust her because she never broke her word. And she could trust him because she could see right through him. Well, she'd probably be there well before him. She at least didn't have to fight her way through rainstorms of ravens. That could come in handy at a pinch. Building these platforms was so expensive, they'd run out of budget for guardrails. wasn't his fault. They looked so breakable.
As he came around the bend, there was Lupino, unconscious on the side of the path. And Renato could smell a familiar, sweet, smoky scent. Who? Zenobia. It had to be. She never used a combat spell when she could use drowsy gas. That meant she had the Iblis stone. What would it do to her? She hated her father now. She'd kill him for sure. The council wouldn't mind if she killed the Emperor, but murdering her father would destroy her. He had to get to whatever ledge she was on and talk her down from it.
Hey, why don't you guys fight in groups? Oh, I know. Because there's no I in team. And I was just getting warmed up, he thought.
Everyone in the council chamber was dead. Zenobia stood shivering in the courtyard, drenched in blood. Why? He managed. They started arguing with me. I lost my temper and I wanted their blood. Well, not me. The stone did. Why did you take it from Lupino? I had a plan. You had a stupid plan, she said. I'm going to go kill my father now. No, you can't. You'll just take his place. You'll become worse than him. Get out of my way, or I'll kill you too. You won't kill me, he said. And I won't let you kill the Emperor. Enraged, she raised the sword. You hate him too? He could sense the Iblis stone, yearning for his death. But she didn't strike. If you kill him, it'll destroy you. I know you. Shut up! She shouted, her sword trembling. I won't lose you again. Not for anything. Get away from me, he said, and he was very close. I can't lose you again. And he was in reach of her sword now. I hate him! I hate you too! I love you, he said for the very first time. And then she was weeping. He was holding her. The sword had dropped from her hand. He glanced at the Iblis stone. It was no longer the black of the void. It looked like coal. No. It glowed, like a cinder. It was crackling, burning, crumbling into ashes. You've always loved me, haven't you? She said. She was weak. The stone had taken so much from her. Always, he said. She staggered as he helped her up. Let me take you away. Where?
The island of Avalon. The sisters will heal you.
He'll follow us.
Then we need the Farfarer, the fastest ship in the Empire. The Empire had seized his ship. They'd have to take it back. There was a pleasant breeze coming through that door. Had it been closed before? Zenobia was in no shape to fight. But he never fought so well. He wasn't fighting for money or loot or a cause. He was fighting for her. For them. His sword danced, his feet flew, and the ravens recoiled from his ferocity. Renato had always wanted a flying carpet. This was more like a flying tabletop. But it would do. Renato remembered when the Emperor had first come to the throne. He built universities and libraries. He used to invite scientists to dinner. What could have made that toad so afraid of death that he would risk bringing back the lost gods?
Come on. One fox, no waiting.
There it was, his beautiful skycraft, the Farfarer. They would fare very far indeed, beyond the Empire, beyond the reach of the Empire, to the mystical island of Avalon. He didn't know exactly where it was, but he knew he could find it. And they would find peace there. Second star on the right, and straight on till morning, laughed Zenobia. And they laughed together for the first time in a long time. There was a sign. Take the goat across first. But they did not go unnoticed. Scout ships lifted off, and the long lance of the Imperial flagship. Bernardo turned downwind to gain speed. The Raven ships could pursue, but they couldn't close. The Farspeaker croaked,
You return her and live!
"Go sacrifice yourself," yelled Bernardo.
Then you won't have her either.
On the flagship, the Emperor was readying some arcane weapon. It couldn't be. It was the core. A devastating beam lanced out of the flagship. Bernardo zigzagged wildly to keep the Farfare out of it. Now the Raven scout ships were closing the distance, and the beam was getting closer too. Then came a blinding flash, and the air was searingly hot all around him. There was a thunderous, deafening roar. He could smell burnt oak and burnt feathers and burnt flesh. But when he could hear and see again, they were alive and unhurt. And they were alone in the sky. Zenobia embraced him. They had done it. Through luck and through love, they had won the war. "Avalon, here we come," he said as he held her arms wide in the prow of the boat and let her feel its speed.
Maybe the real Avalon is wherever we're together, she said.
And so, after a bit of an argument, Bernardo and Zenobia went to one of the two Avalons. The one shrouded in mists, or the one in their hearts. But which one they went to, I'll never tell. He'd done it. He'd forged his own destiny. Well, he hadn't actually done it. But he knew what he would do. Bernardo smiled at the book. He practically wanted to kiss it. The kid's sacrifice hadn't been in vain. He'd saved the book and saved the world. Bernardo owed him and his mother so much. Bernardo lowered the mainsail and let the Farfarer shoot forward in the breeze. Second star to the right, and straight on till morning. This time, he would win.